My name is Adriana Melendez, and this is Missional Living. This is episode 1, and I wanted to do a special episode edition with a video and audio access so you can listen in and understand the structure and how we're going to go moving forward of every episode of Missional Living. So normally I'm going to have guests from all over South Carolina, the state, the world, just expressing their time as missionaries in their ordinary life with their neighbors, with their homes, across state lines, and even across the globe. But today, I wanted to share with you who I am and what God has done in my life. Because it's an incredible story, not just because it's anything sparkly, spectacular, or road to Damascus, shining bright light of Jesus, but it's a story of a broken person made whole by God, which at the end of the day is the most radical, amazing story that could ever be told. And if you are a believer, then you have one of the most radical, amazing stories that could ever be told. And all you got to do with it is share it. And now you have a story of missional living. My name is Adriana, and this is me. And then I will also encourage with scripture or a quote to focus in the conversation for missional living as we move forward. So today I'm going to read out of one of my favorite books and one of my favorite passages. This is Colossians 3:23 and 24. Whatever you do it enthusiastically, as something done for the Lord and not for men, knowing that you will receive an reward for an inheritance from the Lord. You serve the Lord Christ. Another way to, I've seen it in different translation. It says, whatever you do it with your whole heart. Do it wholeheartedly. Do it enthusiastically. Whatever you're doing, do it for the Lord. You serve the Lord. And that's the structure, that's the frame around missional living. That whatever you do, I work in the media and tech field. Now, sometimes it's really exciting and it's fast and you gotta problem solve, but sometimes it's paperwork and wrapping up cable and getting into dusty, dirty airways and byways and under the stage, and you're like, why am I doing this? But whatever you do it for the Lord. You serve the Lord Christ. And that's an opportunity. I'm telling you, it opens up opportunities for you to share your testimony, for you to be a living testimony. Share the testimony, share God's work through word and deed in your everyday life. So each question I'm going to ask, and I'll ask all my guests, my very first question is, who are you and what has God done in your life? Well, I've already shared I'm Adriana, but I'll share with you what God has done in my life because it's pretty incredible. Thankfully, God put me in a family and within parents who loved God, who sought to pursue him and know his word. But like every teenager on the planet, I heard and I understood and I captured just enough to be dangerous, basically. Captured just enough to say, yep, I know what you're supposed to do, and I'm just going to look like I'm doing that while I'm doing something else. And so for years, I lived this dual life, this split reality. And on one hand, the church, I served, I smiled, I did all this stuff. On the other hand, I served myself. I was waiting and wanting affirmation for the people who I thought were important, people that I thought were amazing, people that got me jobs, people that got me on different theaters, downtown Charleston, different places where I would work and hustle. And when their approval was on me, it was great. I was like, this is working. I don't know what's going on about this church stuff. I don't know what it means to have God's approval, have God's blessing, or to know who God is. I'm doing good. I'm following the rules. But this, when people are looking at me and saying, good job, that was great. I can't believe someone so young could do so much. Wow, amazing. That felt awesome. When that approval was gone, I messed up, because you mess up, or when I forgot, or I was running late, or just anything, when that approval was gone, oh my goodness, the shame, the doubt, the just self-hatred. And then you add on things like overworking yourself and going so hard that you're going to extremes. Now, this was all going on while I was attending church services and pretending like everything was fine. Now you add on the blatant choice of sin, which I found avenue after avenue to blatantly choose what was not good for me in relationships, in substances, in sharing things that shouldn't have been shared. Like, internet was now mine to capture, as well as the social aspect of the world. I had a car, I could go places. And all of this at its highest was high, but at its lowest brought me low. So much so that it began to mess with my mind, my relationships, my influences. And I was seeking the things that were temporary, like truly temporary, like food or friendships, things that were just spurts of like hits of happiness, instead of seeking God. Well, that brought me to depression and anxiety, things that I did not understand what was going in my mind until I was much older, would bring me to self-harm, bring me to isolation, bring me to like months of not being able to move or get out of bed. And it was a scary time. Again, I kept seeking the things that would excite me for a moment. It felt it felt real. And that's something I struggle with. Like, it felt okay and good at the time, but it was also fleeting, because reality is, when you rely on another person, their affirmation or their congratulations on your sustainability, it does not work. Like, and that's something that anyone can really tell you. Well, God did this amazing thing. Apart from coming to earth as a human form and living a perfect life and dying a cruel death and living again, he did this cool thing where that whole moment became personal. God living a perfect life so that he could be my personal peace. He revealed that to me by sending me to East Africa. Now, hold on, wait, okay, you're talking about this kid who's doing theater, who's doing art and all this stuff, and sometimes going to church and doing all this stuff. Well, yeah, our church had an opportunity to partner with people in East Africa, believers, Christians, churches. And I'm 17 years old, and I'm like, heck yeah, I'm down for an adventure. My whole life is crazy pants, and I'm gonna go do what I want when I graduate high school. Like, I'd love to go to Africa. Like, come on, I love adventure. I love trying new things. Well, while we were in Tanzania, we met Christians who had actually given their whole life to God. Their whole life, their whole existence, from morning to night, from day one to the end time. They gave their heart, their soul, their mind, their body, their strength to God. And I watched them praise God with all joy, not fleeting, not temporary, not tiny, all joy. And I'm thinking, well, here we are in the middle of nowhere. There's some goats around me. It's hot. But, if they live in a good life, I'm sure that's why they're living with all this joy. And I heard story after story of women who were going to go home and they knew they were going to be beaten by their husbands. And so why would they have joy? And then there were men who knew that their relationship with the community was going to be weakened because they were a man of only one wife, and they were going against a lot of the cultural norms of their tribe. We had children who were jumping and leaping for joy even though they had very little. And what we had, we could give them, but again, temporary. The temporary things that they had, whether it was pain or even provision, was not their sense of joy or non-joy. And it blew my mind. I'd never seen anything like it. I never saw this actual practical living like you have been eternally saved. They were actually doing everything as if it was unto the Lord. Like this Colossians passage I read. They were dancing as if they were unto the Lord. They were hurting like it was unto the Lord. They were speaking as if it was unto the Lord. Never seen it before. And I grew up in church and I grew up around Christians. It just hit me so hard, and I realized, God, cried out to God. I said, I've never loved you like that. I've never been loved by you like that. I'm a stranger when it comes to the things of God because I'm not a part of God. I'm not a child of God. I'm someone made in God's image, but who is consistently rebelling against him. So, one day, in the middle of East Africa, Tanzania, actually it was night, and I'm looking at the stars, and I can see them. I see them in a way that you don't get to if there's any light pollution. I'm seeing the stars. I'm seeing the vastness of God's creation in the night sky. And I just cry out to God and say, God, you're doing this. You are the one who's creating joy. You're the one who's creating provision. I'm just messing my life up. I have scars. I have issues. I have, going back and forth of not knowing what to do in any given situation. I was like, God, I'm not doing this right. Please take my life. Take my life for whatever that means. And for the first time, it meant something different than what I meant in the past. In the past, I had begged God to take my life off from this earth. So unhappy, so unwell. For the first time, I meant take my life and do something with it. I don't know if there's potential here. I might just be a bag of bones, but God, I know because I've seen your people that you can do something with this. I remember so clearly, I understood God in that moment to say, I'm going to need all of you because I'm going to do something. Got it. Well, 17, come back home and I'm like juiced up because I'm like, God has done amazing things. He's doing amazing things in Tanzania, and missions is the greatest. And I can't wait to go back, and I'm so excited. And I'm just trying to read everything I can read, and I'm in classes being taught by someone who's way above me, and everything he's teaching, I'm I don't understand, but I really hope one day I do. And I'm just reading everything that I can, and God is just providing person after person to disciple me. He's providing words and wisdom, and I am just excited. And then every day becomes a revelation, a revealing of, all right. So remember when you didn't trust me with your future? Well, your future's going to change, and now you have to trust God. Okay, my future is different now, all right? I'm excited. I'm so excited. Okay, remember when you didn't trust me with your finances? Well, your finances belong to God now. So your finances have changed. I'm like, oh, all right, okay, all right, I'll work and I'll do this. over and over again, God unveiled and revealed every single aspect of my life that I did not trust him with. And he just took it. I want to say like, oh, I willingly gave it over because I'm such an obedient servant. Like, no, I'd given God my everything, my whole life. So yeah, even if I was grasping onto it with my fingernails, God's like, yeah, this is mine now. And I'm going to redeem it. And thank God he did. Now, I also really wanted to go on mission trips. We had some opportunities to go within the United States that I took. But it wasn't 2 years until I was able to go back to international mission trip. But through 17 to now, God has just taken me through such a time as giving me options for word, being discipled, discipling others, going on mission. But one thing I really want to focus on too is the damage that I had done in those 17 years. And I also see it now also, it's damage I did. Like, we understand sin breaks down everything. So the relationships people have with you are also broken. And the things that people do to you and say to you is because of their brokenness. And that does affect you, and that has an effect on your state and your abilities and your stability. But most of the time, it is things that I have done or the reality of sin that I just exist in that had consequences, even after becoming a follower of God, even after becoming a child of God, when God was continually and consistently renewing and revealing things that he walked with me through. To this day, there has been struggle and trial that God is walking through. Again, providing his church and his people. But there are a few years that, goodness, I was just a mess as a child of God because I had to deal with the consequences of sin, previous and current. And so what God has done in my life is, first and foremost, he saved it. He saved it because he revealed himself to be true and to be real. And I believed him. And at that time, I just asked him to do the thing that only he could do anyway, and take my life. Please take my unrighteousness, and would you please trade it for your gift of righteousness, your beauty, joy, everything that Jesus did on this earth that I could never do. Walk in peace, be kind, just, and then ultimately be the sacrifice that I couldn't. Live the life, die the death, and then defeat death, where his flesh was gone, but his spirit could never be smothered, and come back in this renewed state that I could never meet without him. Jesus did that. And I asked for God, I just need help. Can't do this. Please make this trade. This is an unfair trade, but it's something that God has totally opened up for every person. And in that time, he's then done the work of revealing, fixing, correcting, rebuking, blessing, all these years. And I also have a very long way to go. I actually have the rest of my life for God to make me more like Jesus. And that's what he does for every believer. And no matter what stage you are, you have a story to share of what God has done in your life for someone who does not know God. You know, the Bible says that we are to share, we are to give both through word and deed. So yes, do, serve, live, go, but also speak, praise, worship, share the gospel, Paul writes to Timothy, do the work of an evangelist. That's for anyone and everyone. That's what missional living is. Just ordinary people stepping up to the plate, understanding that what God is doing is greater than our fear, than our hesitation, and that taking that first step of faith in salvation, if you haven't already, and then taking that next step in sharing the gospel, sharing your testimony, just ultimately sharing what God has done in your life, who you are, and what God's done in your life. Now, as we're going on through this series, I will interview people who have just answered the call, see what God is doing in their life, and for you to be encouraged that you don't have to have any special hat or story to be an integral part of what God is doing in the world, to be an integral part of what God is doing in the world, but also what he's doing in the life of your family, neighbor. If you're a teacher, the life of your students, or if you're a parent, the life of your children, or if you work at a job, the life of your coworkers, people maybe who work under you, work above you, next to you, beside you. We have so many people in our life who don't know who God is. And their reality is as bleak as mine before Christ. But God, rich in mercy, provided a way for everyone to have that endless joy through struggle, trial, tribulation. In him, all we have to do is tell our story. And God will allow them to hear what they need to hear, see what they need to see, and then they will choose. They will choose God or they'll choose not God. Why wouldn't we want to be a moment in someone's story through just living a missional life? So this our episode is a short one for sure, but know that in the future we'll have guests and other people sharing their testimony, and I'll be interviewing them. But what God's going to do in your life is remind you of your testimony. So please share that. If you have a time that you've lived missionally, please email me at media@oldfortbaptist.org, or you can, if you go to church here, you can find me always. You can email me. You can message in any way. But media@oldfortbaptist.org is my email, which is a great place to share your testimony. And if you or anyone you know has a time they've lived missionally, they've shared that testimony anywhere, in any way, in any capacity, I'd love to have you on the podcast. We'll just chat a little bit about what God is doing in your life and the lives of people that you love. So I hope you find this conversation encouraging. I hope you find this episode just something to excite you about sharing the gospel and knowing that what you do and how you do it matters to someone's eternity. And as you go, be in the Word to change the world.